Hello and welcome back to Web Design for Small Business. In this video, part 28, house cleaning, we're going to be going over a few things that just need a little tidying up. So with the actual site, we are mostly done, but we still have quite a bit of work still left. We have the homepage done, and if you notice, I have actually finally gotten a really nice, clean, crisp image of the restaurant for the cover page. It's got a really nice blue sky behind it. That adds a really nice sharp contrast for us. The location page is complete. And we have the admin page we've started. The order page we haven't started yet. And we have the menu page, which is mostly done but still needs a bit of work. Our login and account creation, registration, all done. So just a few odds and ends, but basically this menu page, I'm still waiting to get some more information. I need images for each of the menu items as well as descriptions with ingredient lists and stuff like that before I can really flush that out, and that's a major part of completing this menu, and we really do want that menu done before we go on to the ordering part. So wanted to just make this one video where I just go in and clean up. After each video, I always notice there are a few things I'd like to change, or something I can do differently, or something that's just missing. So yeah, I thought we'd just take some time and quickly do that. All right. So the first thing I want to cover is, I'll need to log in. Okay, so when we log in, we go to our administration page, and we have our menu settings, and we can turn the orders on and off. So now we can make our orders. Well, when we turn that off, we disable the ability for them to add things to the order, but that order button is still there. So what we want to do is we want to have that hidden if the option for ordering is turned off. So if this allow orders switch is set to 0, we want to disable that. So that's simple enough to do. So all we need to do is go into our index page, and scroll down to our menu and order right here, this piece here, and we just need to break this out. So just creating a PHP tag around it. Add an echo, and then because we're echoing that, we have to fix this like that. Okay, and then we have to put all this within an if statement. So just wrap it in curly bracers, and then after our PHP tag, we go if parenthesis, and in that parenthesis, $, that parenthesis $S, square brackets, inside the square brackets, single quotes, inside the single quotes, allow hyphen orders. So if allow orders, which would mean if that was switched to 1, then echo that. So we'll save that, go back here, that's set to 0, so we're just going to refresh it, and indeed that orders popped away. Now if we change this, it will come back, but it won't come back right away because that's PHP that enables it to be shown or not. So if we want it to be instantaneous when we click that, not have to refresh it, because really it's just loading any page, we'll bring that back again. So if I turn it off, it doesn't go away, but then if I click any other page, that's when it reloads and it'll do that. If we want it to pop in and out every time, then we would have to keep it added and then remove it or show it with JavaScript. But I'd prefer to keep it with PHP. So one thing that we can do, if we really need to, is after we call that orders, we could have it refresh the page. And it's a good thing I actually looked at this because we still have a console log in there. I want to delete that. So after we have this value and change, we want to window.location dot reload. And we might want to even set that in a timeout. Save that, go back here, refresh. So now you can see the order comes in and goes out when I hit that button, because what it's doing is after I hit that button, it will actually refresh the page for us now as well. So there we go, that's done. Okay, the next thing I wanted to do is revisit my little arrow here. I tried to work it out before, but I was having trouble getting it to vertically align. But I think I figured out the kinks when we were getting this arrow to vertically align. So it should be very similar to that, just up there. So I am going to attempt that now. Okay, so what we want to do for these flags, we want to put a little arrow in front, and we want to try to do something about how it kind of jumps around with the hover over. It has to do with not being able to prioritize the hover over on the buttons and the fading in of the buttons as we go across. But it's kind of messy and I want to clean that up a bit. So what we're going to do in our index page is a couple things. First, we're going to change the IDs of our flags, each of these first ones. So where the second one has a -h, we're going to add a -s to each of these. Okay, and then right under our flags, hit enter there. And we're going to create a new span. And we're going to give it an ID is equal to arrow. Okay, and in that span, we're going to create a couple of icons. And the first one will be fast space FA hyphen 4x space FA hyphen FW space FA hyphen caret hyphen left. And we're going to give this one an ID, putting the ID before the class there. And the ID is going to be flag hyphen arrow. Okay, under that one we're going to create another one. This one is going to have an ID of flag hyphen bars, and it will have a class FAS FA hyphen 3x because the bars are quite tall. FAFW FA hyphen grip hyphen lines hyphen vertical. And that just gives us two vertical lines, making it 3x instead of 4x will actually make it about the same size as the caret. Otherwise it's quite a bit larger, which makes it larger than our flags even, and just doesn't look good. 3x makes it a little bit smaller, so it kind of looks just like a kind of sideways equal sign. Okay, now under this span we're going to create another span. And we're going to give it a class. And the class is equal to lang animation. Animations with an S plural. And capital A for the animation. And that's camel caps all together. Okay. And in that span, we're going to create an image tag. And we're actually just going to copy this first one. And then we're going to remove that S hyphen. So the original flag gets given to this one. And then we're just going to copy that line and we're going to paste it for each of the other ones. So French, German, Ukrainian, Chinese. Okay, and save that. And that's all we need for that page. Now we're going to go to our CSS and we're going to create a class for that arrow. So pound arrow, just right at the bottom. Curly bracers, vertical hyphen line, colon, middle, semicolon. That was what was preventing me from being able to figure it out the first time, just needed that in there. And then we're also going to give it a cursor, colon, pointer, so that people know that they can click on it and it will do something. that's all we need in our CSS, and then the rest will be done in our Highway 45 PHP, because this is what controls all of our other pages, and we're basically looking at this scripts block from here to here. Okay. So we want to create a new line after this flag. And it's going to be, going to copy this one, the one above it, and paste that. And after this hyphen, we're going to put S hyphen and change the hide to a show. And we're going to paste again, still having that flag copied. We're going to change flag to lang and keep it with hide. Okay. Now for each of these hover ones, we want to change that so that the flag hyphen is flag hyphen S hyphen. Like that. And like that. So where we hit it there and where we showed it there, we have to add those. Okay. Nothing changed in those ones. And then after here, we're going to create a new line. And we're going to create a couple PHP variables. First one we're going to call show flags camel caps. And that is going to be equal to single quotes semicolon. And in there, $sign, parentheses, inside the parentheses, double quotes, dot lang animations, dot hide. So we're going to hide our language animation ones that we created, $sign, parentheses, inside the parentheses, double quotes, inside the double quotes, square brackets, inside the square brackets, ID caret equals lang hyphen and then dot show. So basically the opposite of what we did up there with it. And space. And then we're going to do a set timeout, parentheses, semicolon, and inside there we're going to do a function, parentheses, curly bracers, comma, 10,000. And 10,000 is basically giving it a timeout of 10 seconds. And then in here, $sign, parentheses, double quotes, $sign, flag hyphen bars, and then outside dot click, parentheses, semicolon. So basically after 10 seconds, click the flag bars button. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to have an arrow, and when you click on the arrow or the flag, it will move everything across, and then the arrow will change to bars, and when you click on the bars, it will all go back. But if you don't click on anything for 10 seconds, it'll automatically click the bars and go back, so that it's not staying open. Okay, so on the first line here, fade in fast. Oh, and sorry. At the end of here, sorry, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So at the end here, dot, double quotes, \n, and then we need to create a new line, and we're going to create one called hide flags. And just adding my new line ahead of time because I always forget to do those. Okay, so inside the single quotes, we have our ID lang hide. I'm just going to copy and paste that, save myself typing it. And then this lang animations, copy that, paste that in, and change the hide to show. And that's all we need in that one. Okay. Now at the end of this first one, so fade in fast, the last fade in fast, we're going to put comma, function, parentheses, curly bracers. Inside those curly bracers, we're going to put $, parentheses, double quotes, pound, flag hyphen arrow, outside of the parenthesis, we're going to have a fade out fast. Make sure you're keeping track of all your parentheses and curly bracers and semicolons. If you mess up and miss one, it'll break the entire code, and you'll be hitting yourself trying to figure out where you missed it and having to go through everything trying to fix it. So keep track of that stuff very closely. After this fast, we're going to do another comma and function, parenthesis, curly bracers. Inside those curly bracers, we're going to do a $, parentheses, inside the parentheses, double quotes, pound, and this is going to be flag hyphen bars. Outside the parentheses, we're going to do a fade in, parentheses, semicolon, and there will be fast, and then comma, function, parentheses, curly bracers, and this time inside these curly bracers, a pair of single quotes, a pair of dots inside the single quotes, and inside that, $, show flags. So this is where we're going to put our show flags functions. They're just all going to go in there at the end. Now for our flags 2, actually what we'll do is, now that we have this, so starting with this comma here, so flags, English, fast, this comma, all the way through there, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So basically you want 2 semicolons and then the first curly bracer, so you're stopping between the curly bracer and the parenthesis. So there should be 2 on your left and 4 semicolons on your right. Copy that, and we're going to paste that into the first line of each of these right after that fast. Okay, so now the next one, the JS flags 2. And after this slow, comma, function, parentheses, curly bracers, inside the curly bracers, $, parentheses, double quotes, pound, flag, arrow, dot fade in, parentheses, semicolon, inside the parentheses, double quotes, and fast. So for this one, we're going from the comma through to the, so after the first semicolon and the first curly bracer. So we should only have one semicolon to our left, and we should have 4 to our right. Copy that and paste that after each slow. Okay. And then copy an entire set, so a semicolon, parenthesis, and curly bracer from the end. Copy that and just add one to the end of each of these. So if you count the semicolons at the end of each line, if it doesn't matter if it's the first one or the second one, they should all have 6 semicolons. And that's kind of a good way to keep track. Okay, and then going to the start, we're going to click on right in front of our $, right after our single quote, and we're going to go $, parenthesis, inside those parentheses, double quotes, inside those, hashtag, and inside that is, or after that is flag hyphen bars dot fade out, and just the left parenthesis, don't put a right one, and double quotes, and inside those double quotes is fast, and outside that put a comma, function, parenthesis, both left and right, and then a right curly brace, or sorry, a left curly bracer but not a right one, and then 2 single quotes and a space. Inside those single quotes, double dots, and inside the double dots are your $hide flags. And then we're going to copy that whole first part. So from the $sign at the beginning to our space on the right after the single quote. Copy that and then paste that into the front of each of our JS flag 2 lines. So it'll start with the bars fading out fast and then initiate our hide flags and then play out the rest. So what these show flags and hide flags are doing are basically swapping out the buttons for placeholder images. So that way, while it's doing the animation of the fading in and fading out, it's not the buttons that are fading in and fading out, it's placeholder images. So that way you can't click on them and have them actually do anything. So it's hiding the clickable fields, so there's nothing you can click on while it's animating. Then once the animation's done, it swaps out the images. So it'll prevent people from being able to click on it as it's coming out and going in, but that'll prevent it from glitching out too. Alright, so now after all that, we need a few more lines of code. So I'm going to break this down into a new line. There we go. Okay. And then for this one, we're going to put in here $, parentheses, inside the parentheses, double quotes, pound, flag, hyphen, arrow, and dot show. And then another line break. I just put that one up at the top with that extra line break from these ones because it was the shortest of all the ones that I'm making down here. Alright. So this line itself we actually don't need, so I'm just going to delete it, but I'm going to keep the extra stuff. Oh, never mind. That was just the last line. There we go. Alright. Next one. Okay, $, parentheses, double quotes, pound, flag hyphen arrow, dot click, parentheses, semicolon, inside the parentheses, function, spell it properly though, parentheses, curly bracers, inside the curly bracers, there you go, single quote, dot dot, single quote, and in here, JS flags 1. Oh yes, we do delete this one altogether. So like that. And then I'm just going to copy this one and paste it and change the arrow in the second one to bars and click function and JS flags 2. So instead of hovering over and hovering out, we're clicking on it twice. So clicking on the arrow and clicking on the bars. Now for this one, we do $, parentheses, dot, lang animations, dot click, function, and inside the function, curly braces, $, parentheses, double quotes, pound, flag hyphen arrow, outside the parentheses, dot click. So basically what this means is if you click on any of the language animations, which are basically our flag placeholders, so up at the top where we should just have one flag, like I said, this ends up getting broken. Yeah. The one flag, if you click on that, it will act like you're clicking on the arrow too. So clicking on that is the same as clicking on the arrow. Alright. So save that. And now we go and refresh our page. Okay. So now you see we have our arrow, we have our flag, although this doesn't change now when I hover over it. So there's no animation effect, but we do have our mouse, and then when I click on that, they all come out. That changes to the vertical bar, and now you can see all my flags have their proper animations, so I can click and choose one, and then it will just reset itself like that when I click on one. But you do have to click instead of just hovering. But it's all smooth now. I can click on that to get rid of it. And if you click on it again, it just basically acts like you're clicking on it and brings it back out. So it's quite a bit cleaner. I'm happier with that. And yeah, now we can move on to the next part. Okay, so for this next piece, what we're going to do is we're going to make our changes to the menu. It's going to be two-part. First, we're going to implement changing each of these variables as it gets pulled off the database and convert them into a constant that we can then use in our translation pages. And then we're also going to change the way that we select the egg rolls and wontons for the group dinners. So instead of having it listed multiple times, we're going to have each one listed once and have a number beside it with how many of each, with a button to add to either. So that's what we're going to do. So going into our NetBeans, there's quite a bit that we're going to have to do to kind of rework this, but everything we're going to do is basically going to be within our menu, and then we're going to have to add a CSS class as well. Okay, so to start, the first thing we're going to do is create a function. So underneath this, if S allows orders, then hide the order, we're going to create a function. So function make constant, so camel caps for that, parentheses, inside the parentheses, $V, sorry, lowercase v, and curly bracers. Inside the curly bracers, Now I'm going to lay this out flat so it's easier to read. You can compact it all if you want to make it take up less space, but I'm doing this just so that it's easier for you guys to read. So we're going to do a bunch of string replaces, because if you remember, basically when we typed it in, we just typed it in, the first letter of each word was capitalized, just like how you see it here, and then the rest of the word is lowercase. It's separated by spaces. In order to get it to be constants, basically what we need to do is we need to remove any of the special characters, turn everything to uppercase, and then replace the spaces with underscores. So we're going to be doing a bunch of string replace calls. So string replace, and then within the string replace function there are 3 variables. The first one is what you're searching for, the second one is what you want to replace it with, and the third one is the variable that you're affecting. So for the first one, so they'll all basically be like this with the $V at the end, and typically that second one will be blank. So the first one is ampersands AMP semicolon. So we're basically removing the ampersands. Now if you remember when we stored it, it would have, when I created the database, I did go ahead and change any of the special characters to HTML entities ahead of time, just because I know that causes issues if you don't. If you didn't, you might want to do that in your own database. And we'll have a function for that when we get to the admin part where we can add new items. Okay, so the next one is equal to string replace. Actually just going to copy that line so that it's easier to paste it each time. And this one we're going to do and APOS semicolon for the apostrophe. Now you can also write that as ampersands #39 semicolon. However, depending on how it's written, it will only replace the one that you put in there. So if you have it written both ways or one over the other, make sure you use the one that you actually have, or use both. Next one, the open parentheses and the close parentheses. And those, we just write the special characters for them because when I have them in there, the HTML entity encoder doesn't actually change those. And then we're going to do space to underscore. Now here's the thing though, we're converting all the spaces to underscores. However, when we replace these things, like for example the ampersands, there's typically a space on either side of that ampersand. So when we remove that, it'll have a double space. And we don't have any double spaces, we only have single spaces. So then what we want to do is we want to take any double ampersands from being converted from the space, and we want to convert a double ampersand, or sorry, a double underscore into a single underscore. So anywhere where there's 2, we just want it to be 1. And finally, is equal to strtopper, string to upper. And this will convert it, all the alpha characters from A through Z, from lowercase to uppercase. Okay. And then finally, I'm just going to write on this last line, we're going to return our v. However, we want it to be a constant. Now, sorry, semicolon. So what we want to do is we want to convert this from a string, because it's formatted like a constant now, but it's still recognized as a string. So what we need to do is we need to convert it to a constant, and in order to do that, we call the constant function. So constant v. So now anything that we pass through this makeConstant function will be converted from plain text into an actual constant that we can then use in our language database. So now for this guy here, where we do the for each and we break out, this is part of the dinners, the group dinners thing, where we have either selecting an egg roll or a wonton soup. So we want to change this up. And right after this guy, we want to add another variable that we're going to use, and that is just m. So $, lowercase m, capital I, lowercase n is equal to 0. We keep the for each, and then after this for each, that's where we're going to increment our new variable. We keep this line. We keep that line. We keep the for each. And we keep the if statement all the same. And then we get rid of this whole while part. So this whole line here gets deleted. And then one of these two closing curly bracers. And then I'm just going to break this apart a little bit to make it easier to read, because we're going to be adding more to them. Getting rid of this O and this line break. And bringing the span down. Okay. Now we want to create new line between this, and we want each one of these to have its own span. So I'm closing that span off, and then I'm going to just put the same span class as above. Okay. Then under each one, going to add another span. And in this span, I'm going to put a space, parentheses, and a space, and inside those parentheses, I'm going to create another span. And this span is going to have an ID, which is equal to count hyphen single quotes inside the single quotes, dots inside the dots, $, lowercase m, capital I, capital O, square brackets, 0. Between the single quote and the double quote at the end, another hyphen, and another set of single quotes and dots. And in there, $m, lowercase m, capital I, lowercase n. So our variable that we had created. So this will basically indicate the number of our, this one is the egg roll, and this one is the soup. So we have it in this span, which contains brackets, or sorry, the parentheses, and then inside the parentheses will be the actual number, which we'll be able to adjust with this ID. Then after the span, we're going to create an I tag. The I will have an ID, which is equal to btn hyphen, and then the same as this. So it's the exact same ID except btn instead of count. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. And then after the ID, we're going to have a class. And this is going to have a class of FAS, FA-SM, FA-FW, and FA-plus. And then space app-add. And that's the custom class that we're going to create. So that we can just apply some custom styling to our I element here to essentially just make it a button. Okay. So now we're going to copy that whole line and paste it under this one and change the zeros to ones. Now, one other thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go back and change each of these to include our custom function. So make constant and parentheses like that, and just doing the same for each time we're calling the name. So 1, 2, and 3 places where you need to make that adjustment. And now what we want to do is just above this last line, the else statement, so staying within our if, what we want to do is create some JavaScript. So for the first one, we want $, parentheses, double quotes, hashtag btn hyphen, single quote, dot, $mio, square brackets 0, dot, single quote, hyphen, min, really should just copy and paste this stuff. Okay, outside the parenthesis, we're going to do a dot hide. So basically what we're going to do is if the button if this item has the maximum number of items, because we're basically adding a plus sign to each one. So if you hit the plus sign of one, what it'll do is it'll add to that one and subtract from the other one, so that you can never have too many, as you get one or the other, but not both. So for example, the dinner for two, you get two, so you can either have one of each or two for one and zero for the other. So you can never have more than two. And that's what the second variable is. Is the count. Okay, so basically when we start, what we're going to do is have one set to, so in here, single quote, double dot, $M, lowercase m, capital I-O, and square brackets 2. So this one will be set to the maximum amount allowed, and this one, between these two spans, we're just going to put 0. So this one is going to start with none. We're always going to start with full egg rolls, and then basically hide the plus sign for this one, so there's only the plus sign visible for this one, so you can hit that to start it off and take some from there and add it to that. And because this one starts at 0 and this one starts at max, the system will automatically know what the max number is without us having to change that information. Okay, so first we're hiding that. Next JavaScript. And it's going to be this same one, so I'm just going to copy that. And instead of hide, this is going to be click, parentheses, semicolon, inside parentheses, function, parentheses, curly bracers, and then I'm just going to add an extra line there. And in here, I'm going to create a couple of variables. So var C1 is equal to $, and it's going to be our count. So I'm just going to copy this. Count .html, because this isn't an input field, it's a span. So in order to get the data that's in between the span, that is considered the HTML. So when we call the HTML, that's what we'll be pulling. And then we want to do the same for the next one, so we have both numbers and we can compare them. Copying that, pasting that, this variable is going to go from C1 to C2. Make sure that's ones and lowercase l's look identical with this font, so I always like to be sure. And change that 0 to a 1. Okay, so we pull both of our variables. Now the next thing we need to do is modify them. but we want to only do it if, so if parentheses C2 is greater than 0, then we want C1 is equal to number C1 plus 1, semicolon. So what we're doing is we're saying that C1 we want to basically add 1 to it, but we also want to make sure that it recognizes this as an integer and not as a string, because we don't want it to become 11, we want it to be 2 if this is 1, for example. So making sure this is a number by putting it in parentheses and adding the number function with the capital N, and then add 1 to that, and then for C2, number C2 minus 1. So if C2 is greater than 0, because if this is already 0, or sorry, yes, if this is already 0, we don't want to be able to subtract 1 and have this one as minus 1. So we need to have it greater than 0 in order for it to be able to subtract 1 from it. So it's always whichever one is being decreased, that's what we want to check is greater than 0, because we need to do this again for the second one. Okay, so the next line, we then want to write the new numbers. So $, parentheses. Essentially, we can just copy that line there, paste, and C1, and then copy this line here, and C2. That's right. Remove that curly bracer. This is all going to be under that curly bracer. In fact, everything else we're going to do is going to be under that curly bracer, so I'm just going to add that curly bracer to the end here. Okay, so the next line, if C1 is less than, and then single quote, dot, dot, single quote, and in here, $, lowercase m, capital I-O, square brackets, the number 2. So if C1 is less than our max, and this will be a number because we're not giving it quotations, so it won't recognize it as a string, it'll recognize it as an integer automatically because it doesn't have quotes. And it's a number. So if C1 is less than our max, then this, so $, parentheses, in the parentheses the word this, dot fade in. So when you use this, it's basically the same thing as whatever you initially called. So in this case, it's this btn with the first one, our Agril button, our Agril adding button. That's what this is in this specific case. So we're going to fade that in. else $sign parentheses this dot fade out. So if it's less than that, fade it in. If it's not, fade it out. So if it's equal to or greater than the max, then it will fade out, so it no longer becomes an option for us to click on. And then we're going to copy that line, paste it in there, change the C1 to C2, and change this to our BTN. So I'm just going to copy this text, paste there, and paste here. But I'm changing the number inside from 0 to 1 because we're talking about our second field. Okay. So that's basically it. And we need to copy this whole thing and then paste it again and change the variables so that it reflects the second item instead of the first item. And sorry, I'm going to add a line break there. Copy that, paste it. So one click. These two are left the exact same. This one should be C1 instead of C2. And these ones are going to be the opposite. So C1 is subtract 1 and C2 is adding 1. And then those two are the same again. And then these two are essentially flipped. So this one would be our C2, and this one would be C1. C1. And if you want to keep it in order, you could cut that one and paste it on top. It doesn't really matter which order those two are in. And sorry, these ones here need to be changed to zeros because this is talking about the first one, not the second one. I'm going to go to our class, and in here we're going to go dot app hyphen add parenthesis, or sorry, curly bracers, color colon hashtag 700 semicolon cursor colon pointer semicolon, and then after that I'm going to do a space and I'm going to go app add again, so dot app hyphen add colon hover and curly bracers, and in there color pound 004500 semicolon. So just changing the color on the hover, and save. And now when we add, we can change, and if you try to click more than you can, it won't let you go below that 0. So yeah, you can cycle between the two now. And then it stores it in there, and that when we go to create our orders, we'll be able to pull that variable out from the HTML because of the same way we set it. So there we go. that part is now done. So the only other thing I wanted to do was go over the translations for the admin page. So in our admin page, and there's an error message that we should probably translate to. So these parts here will go and replace with constants, but I will do all of that offline. I have completed the translation pages for the site now, other than the ones that we haven't done. So in the next video we're going to go and finish up the menu page so that we can go on to the ordering and completing the admin page. So in the admin page we'll create that edit menu button where we can edit the menu, edit those items. And it'll be basically the same as when the user clicks on each of these, it'll bring up a pop-up modal in the admin page. We'll have the option to edit those. As well. So, all right, until the next video.